The reason why Ganondorf is able to return again and again in each iteration of the Zelda series, other than a split timeline, or with the help of a certain special relic, is this guy, the King of Demons, or the Bringer of Demise. In German, he's known as the Todbringer, the Bringer of Death. In French, he is the Avatar du Néant, the Avatar of the Void. But you probably know him as just Demise. How does this leader of the demon tribe have anything to do with Tears of the Kingdom? He's actually more pivotal to Ganondorf's current situation than you might believe, and the odds that he makes a return in Tears of the Kingdom are more likely to happen than not. To recap the ending of Skyward Sword, Link, after obtaining the Triforce, wishes for the Imprisoned, a magically sealed form of Demise created by Hylia, to be vanquished. After this wish is made, the Skyloft Temple falls down on the creature, imprisoning him, pun intended, and he's sealed away permanently. Everyone celebrates because evil is finally defeated. Knock knock, who's there? It's Ghirahim. The Demise loyalist decides to ambush our heroes and steal Zelda, whisking her back to the past to just after the era of Hylia, the point in time after Hylia recently sealed Demise as the Imprisoned, and then sacrificed herself so that she could someday return to use the Triforce to defeat Demise. Ghirahim does his little ritual dance and brings the Imprisoned, which still exists in the past, back from Hylia's goddess-endorsed seal. This earlier version of the Imprisoned then steals the soul of Hylia from Zelda, the goddess's avatar, which then brings Demise out of his magical confinement. We discover that Ghirahim is Demise's alternatively obedient blade, as Demise transforms Ghirahim into his chosen weapon. Demise announces that he plans on taking dominion over Hyrule, a goal motivated by his hatred and resentment for the goddesses. But this hatred and resentment go by another name, Malice. Link comes to blows with the King of Demons and wins. But, and this is key, the malicious leader of the demon tribe first plunges his own sword into the ground and it vanishes. Almost like a reverse conjuration. In the Japanese version of Skyward Sword, Demise places what is known as a Jubaku, a permanently binding spell or curse on the Link and Zelda of Skyward Sword. Specifically, he designates his curse in such a way that his malice is eternally tied to the spirit of the hero, what each Link possesses, and the blood of the goddess, the lineage that each Zelda belongs to, so that his malice, his hatred and resentment, will always follow these forces through what is known as Rine, the never-ending cycle of life and death referred to in Buddhism. From this recap, we can prove 6 facts. Number 1, Demise can return if the goddess Hylia's soul is consumed. If he consumes the soul of Hylia, he can come back as something other than the black mist that was absorbed upon his defeat, or a toe monster. Number 2, Demise can subsist without the Triforce, as the curse he utters, much like what his name in other languages represents, makes him his own raw force within the Zelda universe. Demise is typically represented by Ganondorf, his chosen avatar, in most Zelda games. Ganondorf has a trend of relying on the Triforce of Power to come back, but he also has a lesser-mentioned history of his followers wanting to bring him back a la Dracula from Castlevania. But Demise doesn't necessarily need Ganondorf alive to come back. In fact, Demise has a better chance of coming back because of a dead Ganondorf. Number 3. The Triforce can make any wish a reality. Link, to the best of our knowledge, wishes to vanquish Demise, and Demise gets squashed by Skyloft Temple, sealed away forever, pending that he's permanently sealed inside of a magical sword that can't break, or he doesn't have a dutiful weapon that's currently sentient. Number 4. Remember when I said Demise's weapon conjures away? That weapon has a name, and it's Ghirahim, the secondary antagonist who taunts Link throughout most of Skyward Sword. We can't prove that Ghirahim is dead or alive right now, he's just missing in action. And Ghirahim can exist without a functioning master to serve. He was doing this well before the events of Skyward Sword, and for the majority of Skyward Sword, when Demise was subdued. Number 5. The Master Sword seals Demise's residual conscience after his defeat. Impa announces that his remnants are decaying slowly within the Master Sword, and she must stay behind to watch the blade during the beginning of the era of the sky. She also says that he must not reawaken. Number 6. Malice follows the spirit of the hero and the blood of the goddess. That goop that possessed the Sheikah Tech, the same goop that you have to purify in Breath of the Wild that usually surrounds monsters, and the same stuff oozing out of this man's corpse, all of that is the essence of Demise's Jubaku, or curse, from Skyward Sword. Alright, fast forward to this moment, and here's a blatantly dead G-Man with no means of returning. I covered this topic in depth in my last video, so feel free to pause and watch that before continuing if you haven't already. And welcome back! Pretty crazy, right? Yeah, so Ganondorf is dead, in Breath of the Wild, the royal family has the Triforce. There is a chance that Zelda doesn't have the Triforce at some point during Tears of the Kingdom, but that's an idea we will intentionally leave out for the sake of this thought experiment. Ganondorf has neither the Triforce nor the Triforce of Power, which are the only proven methods of bringing him back. And Ganondorf hasn't returned for some time, probably to the tune of, let's say, greater than 10,000 years. We know this because there's an established pattern of the Calamity Ganon. Not Ganon, or Ganondorf, but the spectral embodiment of Ganondorf's malice, appearing more than once during that time threshold. The Calamity Ganon is the reason for the creation of the divine beasts. So Link's and Zelda's are reincarnating, but this guy is still here just busting a fat chill, which is a fancy way of saying he's being imprisoned by this green magic hand. And this creates a problem. There's a visual imbalance in Ganondorf's cycle of rebirth. The spirit of the hero and the blood of the goddess essences are inside of their most recent reincarnations. Yet we have the corpse of our villain that's remained this way for at least 10,000 years. Ganondorf hasn't reincarnated. Malice just seems to flow out of him like he's an endless spring, which means, in his current state, he's the source of it. The Calamity Ganon, its Ghost Pig and Sheikah Tech forms, and its Dark Beast Ganon form. All of that came out of this dead guy. Think about it. The Calamity Ganon from Breath of the Wild is not the first time Hylians have seen the Calamity Ganon. This had to have happened, at the very least, more than twice now, if the Divine Beasts were built in response to the Calamity Ganon 10,000 years in the past. And the stuff is still oozing endlessly from blatantly dead Ganondorf. Judging by this scene here, Malice is flowing with the force of a geyser, suggesting that the magical hand seal was more of a band-aid than a permanent solution. We've never really seen the Triforce of Power interact with the dead Ganondorf before, so we can't understand how that would materialize. I also think a newly revived Ganondorf wouldn't necessarily be the candidate to receive the Triforce of Power. I mean, the guy looks like a well-placed sneeze. Could turn him into dust. I think there has to be someone stronger than a newly revived Ganondorf. And if there is someone stronger than a newly revived Ganondorf, that would be the candidate to receive the Triforce of Power. Unless Ganondorf is wearing plot armor and the malice reviving him is the ultimate expression of power. Raising from the dead is a godly trait after all. So I'm currently of the belief that if Ganondorf doesn't come back via conventional means, meaning if the Triforce of Power doesn't somehow latch onto him, I'm trying to cover all my bases here, the malice pouring out of his body will take control and possess him. But you see these eyes right here? Those aren't Ganondorf's eyes. No, they sure aren't. Ganondorf has yellow eyes. These fiery eyes look more like Demise's eyes. Huh, kinda rolls off the tongue. They are the essence of malice. We can see these same eyes on the malice blotches littered throughout Breath of the Wild. That's what is possessing Ganondorf's corpse. Just raw resentment and hatred. Also known in the Japanese version of the game as Onin, or hatred that follows one beyond death. For all intents and purposes, the Gerudo King is mindless at this point and totally beatable. Remember, Demise's conscience is sealed inside of the Master Sword, slowly decaying away. Well, except that Link's arm becomes corrupted and the Master Sword breaks. Yes, Evil's Bane. The same blade that Link couldn't approach in Twilight Wolf form because this blade has a 100% no darkness toleration policy. A weapon we've never seen destroyed. That blade breaks. Demise's residual conscience is contained within the Master Sword. But didn't Impa say that his conscience will slowly decay over time? I want to say something about this. At the end of Skyward Sword, Impa stays in the past, telling Zelda that she will meet her in another life. Soon after, Zelda walks through the Gate of Time, and, as promised, she sees a much older Impa waiting for her. How much time passed? I'm pretty sure it was like 1,000 years or something. I seem to get conflicting answers on the actual length of time. The takeaway is that if Impa can live this long, then what does Impa define as slowly decaying? Her perception of time could be a lot different from the average Hylian. If, let's say for the sake of example, Demise decays at a rate of 0.01% every millennia, it would take 100,000 years for him to fully decay. This means the period of time between the creation of the Divine Beasts and the events in Breath of the Wild would roughly translate to Demise decaying only 10%. Whatever the speed of decay in the Master Sword is, Impa also did say that it needed to be guarded. Guarded as in, make sure that sword doesn't break. This implies the volatility of Demise's residual conscience. If Zelda is in a state of high vulnerability, Demise's now freed conscience could try to absorb her soul, or even possess her. I mean, if you were to counter-speculate that she's playable because of this official tweet from Nintendo Japan, of Zelda holding both a torch and an upgraded Sheikah Slate from Pura, I won't argue with you. For now, all I ask is that you suspend any disbelief you may have regarding the possibility that this could happen at some point during Tears of the Kingdom. If Zelda loses her soul, Demise gains his body back. If Zelda loses her soul, the Triforce she had in Breath of the Wild will also be relinquished, and it will split, which means Ganondorf could also return, albeit super dry. It really all just depends if he's the chosen Triforce of Power candidate. But geez, someone give that guy a water bottle. Demise plus Ganondorf equals 2 evils, which would make the figures in this mural a whole lot more important. It would explain a need for someone complementary to the goddess and her power, like this image symbolizes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's for another video. I did notice that the Zelda of Skyward Sword, when trying to maintain Hylia's seal on the imprisoned, has to enter a dormant crystal state. The dormant crystal is an amber color. One of the most peculiar images I found in the latest Tears of the Kingdom trailer was in this scene. While I was thinking, yes, underground location confirmed, I was also thinking, what in the Lord's name is that root over there? Upon closer inspection, I noticed the root had black scales and surrounded an amber crystal, a crystal much like one we've seen before. I felt compelled to throw that footage into my editing software to get a closer look, and my suspicions were confirmed. I knew exactly where I had seen those scales before. Those were the same scales on the imprisoned, the same black scales of Demise. Fee does state that Demise is said to have been described as taking many different forms, depending on which era he is in. Maybe he's coming back as a tree in this era. This would explain these strange demon planets. Maybe they're connected to this Demise root structure. A Demise Tree structure could explain why Malice is seeping out of Death Mountain. A Demise Tree could theoretically have a root system that had thousands of years, the amount of time it took for several Calamity Ganon events to happen repeatedly, which are basically recurring high-pressured releases of Malice, to cultivate the underground section we will see in Tears of the Kingdom. I see 2 other environmental clues. These fissures or tears in the kingdom of Hyrule, like the floating Hyrule Castle that has been alluded to in several trailers, and the Sky Islands. When we first meet Demise, he is introduced as appearing from a fissure in the earth at the beginning of Skyward Sword. Oddly enough, there's even a physical location on the Breath of the Wild map called the Breach of Demise. There's pretty much a geographical name reference for everything Zelda in Breath of the Wild, but the game's map acknowledges who he is with this name choice, and it even spells it correctly. So now we have a possible Demise Tree root system and fissures with Malice seeping out of them. The more important clue is the Sky Island geography, because the only other time we've seen land masses floating without the help of propellers is in Skyward Sword, which was a feat accomplished by Hylia to save the Hylians from Demise during the era of Hylia. As I mentioned earlier, Ghirahim could come back, because Ghirahim can exist despite Demise, not because of him. We can't confirm that Ghirahim is gone forever, but we do know that he conveniently dipped out right here before the whole eternal curse is spoken into reality. I can't speculate on how Ghirahim would return, but if he's out and about, we know his top priority is the revival of his master. What I can speculate on, however, is the nature of Ghirahim. Ghirahim is to Demise what Fee is to Link. Both are counterparts to each other. While they are a cool callback to the Japanese folklore musing that swords have souls inside of them, what's important to note is that Ghirahim and Fee are alternate forms of the items which they embody. Ghirahim is also a tool used by Demise to bring about the demise of Hyrule. One detail I conveniently left out earlier about the Japanese version of Demise's eternal curse is that the demon tribe is also bound to its intent. We see more evidence of this in the Japanese version of Wind Waker, when Ganondorf is talking about how the Master Sword also places a seal on his demon tribe. The fact that Ghirahim can turn into a blade has noticeable parallels with the demons seen in the latest trailer. These demons are different from the other demons seen in the second Tears of the Kingdom trailer. The transition is stark, considering that the Blood Moon reveals a sharper enemy variety. Instead of organic horns, these demons have weapons for appendages. Having a weapon that is able to physically morph into a bodily form is an attribute we've only ever seen from the relationship between Demise and Ghirahim specifically. And as a bonus tidbit of detail, Ghirahim in his blade form is jaggedly pointed, with his borders patterning a zigzagged sharpness. While it is from Hyrule Warriors, a game not considered to be canon in the Zelda timeline, Ganondorf is capable of wielding the Trident of Demise, which has the same shape as the Ghirahim blade, and these bokoblin horns seen in the Tears of the Kingdom trailer. And here's something I noticed as I was scrubbing through this footage. You see these bokoblins right here? They are floating. as they are apparating into the scene. They are doing the same exact floating that Ghirahim does when Demise turns him into his weapon. So as of right now, this is my best explanation for the monster's weapon appendages. The nature of Ghirahim and the nature of these specific monsters are similar in regard to what a weapon of Demise can do. The difference in appearance between these two types of enemies, other than a day and night cycle, would be Malice, which we know comes from the hatred contained within the Jubaku made by Demise way back when. There's an important distinction to note, and that is that Ganondorf is a human. He is typically a Gerudo male, one that is destined to be born every 100 years to the Gerudo tribe. Demise is not a human. He's been called the Conqueror of Time, but he's also described as the source of all demons. Monsters like the undead Bokoblin of Skyward Sword drop the collectible evil crystals, which are crystallized malice. These monsters are undead and mindlessly attack Link. Breath of the Wild also has mindlessly malicey foes, the cursed enemy heads that float and only retain toxic traits from their former lives. The cursed Lizalfos heads, for instance, only retain the slyness they once had in life. All cursed enemy heads, like the undead Bokoblins from Skyward Sword, will attack anything that breathes. This reaction toward life is similar to how the Calamity Ganon ceases its regeneration after sensing that the spirit of the hero has awoken in Breath of the Wild. That energy is the same malice bubbling and eventually gushing out of poor Ganondorf. It's the same mindless hatred and resentment I've beaten a dead horse with. That malice comes from the Demon King, and not the King of Thieves. In summary, a human like Ganondorf can't produce malice. Malice causes mindlessness. A malice-possessed Ganondorf is not as effective as a once-alive Ganondorf. Demise is the source of all monsters. Demise's mental jail cell, the Master Sword, is Fubar. Demise's newly released residual conscience could use Ganondorf's malice-filled body as a vessel, combining the brains of Demise with the body of Ganondorf. And that's about everything I've got. That's what leads me to speculate that Demise will come back some way, somehow. I received my translation images and my Japanese knowledge from my fellow YouTuber, QuestWithAaron. Channel and video linked in the description. QuestWithAaron, much like me, has an appreciation for other languages and video games, so definitely check out that dude's channel. He tends to explain the etymology of the Japanese script from more recent Zelda titles, from what I can see, and that's been a huge inspiration and resource toward bettering my own personal knowledge of everything Zelda. I think QuestWithAaron is making some amazing content for the Zelda community, and I can't appreciate that enough. Definitely show that channel some love, and tell him who sent you. But I'm curious about what you have to say, or if you disagree, or if I missed anything. Your feedback helps more than you know. If you found this content helpful, definitely Triforce, yes, I like to force puns on myself and my viewers, a click on that like button. If you're looking for more future Zelda content, or whatever else I decide to obsess over, I suggest clicking the subscribe button followed by the bell icon. I am looking forward to sharing more ideas with all of you, and I hope to see you soon.